So Lotus cars have a reputation for maybe not being the most reliable cars in the world. And in fact, some people say that Lotus stands for lots of trouble, usually serious. And I often get people coming up to me asking me, is the Lotus Elise an expensive car to maintain? Because it looks like it's an expensive car to maintain. But to that, I'll tell you, looks can be deceiving. No, the Lotus actually is not an expensive car to maintain. No, the Lotus is not an expensive car to maintain. All right, cut. That's it. End of the video. We're out. Okay, no, just kidding. Here, I'm going to tell you what it cost me to own the Elise over 10 years, and I'm going to give you an average annual cost of ownership. I'll break this down into categories like insurance and registration, consumable stuff like brakes and tires, regular maintenance, and unexpected repairs. And then I'll separately categorize things like upgrades like new wheels or new suspension, which are completely optional expenses. But before I get into the specifics, I'll tell you the two secrets to why the Elise and its cousin, the Exige, are generally pretty affordable cars to maintain. First, they use a Toyota powertrain. The engine and transmission are built by Toyota, that's right. And Toyota, the makers of cars like the Camry, have a pretty good reputation for making reliable engines. On top of that, most engine-related parts can be sourced at your local Toyota dealer or even a major automotive retail store. Ironically, if you're trying to get those same parts at the Lotus dealer, they're going to be marked up 3 to 5 times what the Toyota part costs. Second thing, these cars are light. Now, Colin Chapman, the founder of Lotus, originally made these cars light in order to make them fast. He said that giving a car more power makes it faster on the straights, but making a car lighter makes it faster everywhere.
Chapman was a genius. He changed car design and motor racing forever. His principle was to add speed, add lightness, and he made his cars more agile and efficient when everyone else was simply adding more power to go faster. It was a very different approach. And then Chapman's cars started winning. And he didn't stop there. His team pioneered the monocoque chassis, aerofoil wings, and ground effect, changing Formula One forever.
But another side effect of making a car light is that all the consumable stuff lasts a lot longer. Tires, brakes, clutch, even fuel lasts longer in a light car. A light car simply wears things out more slowly because it's putting less strain on all those different components. For example, a set of tires will typically last me around 10 to 12 track days. A set of brake pads, usually about 10 track days. Ask someone driving a heavy car like a Nissan GTR, and they're probably getting maybe 2 or 3 track days out of a set of brake pads. Okay, so lighter cars don't wear things out as quickly, so that should mean that they're cheaper to maintain, right? Before we get into that, first let's talk about insurance and registration. So for insurance, I pay about $700 a year. Now, I'm not a teenager, I'm married, I have a good driving record, and my Elise isn't my primary car. But for full coverage, $700 a year seems pretty reasonable. So over 10 years, that's cost me about $7,000 though. Registration, at least in California, is sort of related to the value of the vehicle, so it kind of decreases over the time as the vehicle gets less valuable. But that has averaged out for the past 10 years to be about $200 a year. All right, let's get back to the consumable stuff, things like tires and brakes mainly. This has cost me only $2,107 over 10 years. So that's about $200 a year on average. Tires for this car, even if you go with the super sticky track-oriented tires like the Toyo R888s, are about $800 to $1,100 per set. And they last me about 10,000 miles and about 10 track days. Brakes also, I've only ever needed to replace the pads, still haven't had to do the rotors, and they're about $120 for a set of front pads and about $100 for a set of rear if you go with non-OEM but performance pads like Ferodos. So yeah, the consumable stuff is not bad at all. But you're probably wondering about maintenance and you're probably wondering about repairs. I mean, it's a Lotus, so stuff must break a lot, right? Let's cover the maintenance first. Maintenance, I'm calling things like oil changes, brake fluid changes, spark plugs, all the regular service type of stuff. I paid, over the past 10 years, $2,928 for that type of service and work. So that's about $300 a year on average. And I will admit that I do a lot of the simple stuff myself, like oil changes, which saves me on labor costs. A DIY oil change costs me about $80 in oil and the filter. But for anything that I can't handle or needs special tools like an alignment or a coolant flush, I take it to a Lotus specialist locally called TrackSpec. They are awesome, and I'll put a link to them in the description down below. But what about stuff that breaks? People think Lotuses break all the time. Well, that's actually a pretty similar number. It was $1,614 over 10 years, or about $160 a year. So you might be wondering what kind of things have broken on this car, but it really hasn't been much. My air conditioning system needed a new relay, and then it needed to be recharged. That was about $500. One of the wheels needed to be repainted due to some sort of chemical that was spilled on it, and kind of the paint started flaking off. That was about $125. I had a pretty good sized chip in the windshield that needed to be filled professionally. That was about $125. I needed new upper A-arm bushings, which is a kind of common problem on this car, and that was about $700, including the alignment and the corner balance after taking the suspension apart. But that's really it in terms of repairs, and I have not had a lot of things break on my Lotus Elise. So the rest, and where I spent the most money, is on upgrades. Now, upgrades include things that you kind of need to do if you're tracking the car, like a baffled oil pan or the upgraded rear toe links, because those are sort of safety and reliability things if you're taking your car to the track. But the upgrades also included many entirely optional things, like fancy Penske shocks and springs. Those were about $3,300, as well as purely cosmetic stuff, like some carbon fiber parts for the interior, the side scoops, the front splitter. Even the LSS wheels that I put on it were about $1,000 used, and they were a nice upgrade because my car only had the base model wheels originally. The upgrades will kill you, and my car isn't even that upgraded, but I spent about $9,566 on upgrades over the last decade. Again, a lot of these I installed myself, so there wasn't a lot of labor cost included in that. Oh, and I normally wash and detail the car myself, so that doesn't cost me anything, but there was one time where I splurged and got a really nice detail that cost me about $800. All right, so you ready for this? The grand total. Every nickel and dime I've ever spent on this car over the past decade, obviously not including the cost of the car, $26,215. Wow. That is actually quite a lot. I mean, the car itself only cost me $31,000. But it's also a long time, 10 years. So that's, if you average it out, that's only about $2,600 a year for everything, including the upgrades. And that also covers the insurance and registration too. But like I said, the upgrades are really optional. So what if we take those out and just focus on the real operating costs of the car? So maintenance, repairs, consumables, insurance, registration. But if we take out all the upgrades, then it becomes a much more realistic $16,649, over half of which is insurance and registration, $9,000. So there you have it, folks. If you have a Lotus Elise, you should expect to pay about $1,600 a year to operate it. And that includes your insurance and registration. Maybe it's going to be a little bit more if you aren't the do-it-yourself type and want to take it into the shop for everything that it needs. And really, I think that is insanely cheap for a car offering this level of performance and fun. If you drove a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a McLaren, you're going to be paying that amount just for insurance every year. So don't judge a book by its cover. A Lotus Elise is actually a very inexpensive car to own and to service.
Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring the bell so you can get notified when we post a new video.